Hello. So this presentation is to help you with the task of writing a speech. Sometimes though it's written in the test as give a talk. So we'll look at the following slides. Right, so I want you to imagine that you're standing behind this big lectern, this big desk, and that you've got an audience out in front of you. On the right hand side you can see some boxes and they've got typical tasks there. It says give a talk to your year group, make a speech to a group of elderly local people, and give a speech to parents. I want you to look on the left. You've got 30 minutes, and in that time you're going to need to plan and produce your speech. You should really proofread as you go looking for your mistakes as you go along. If you leave it till the end, you might be leaving yourself too much work. And ideally, we're looking for you to produce about 1.5 sides of your exam booklet. The key piece of information though is down on the right hand side, because it's really about what you would say. They often write down what you would say, and that's really about thinking about what it would be like if you had an iPad sitting on your lectern and you were reading from it, or maybe a set of notes and you're reading from those. It's about almost like producing an article that you read out loud to a group of people. But some people see the word speech as a task and they think that they need to use speech marks. But because all of a speech is designed to be spoken out loud, you don't need them at all. So what we've got to do is make them invisible. We don't need them, so they need to disappear. So just like any other piece of transactional writing, we need to spend 5 minutes planning it carefully. And you can see the 3 core stages to what you need to do are in front of you. And I won't go over them in detail, but you just have a good look at what's there, and the following slides will help you with them. The first thing to do is to read the task carefully. I've written one at the bottom, a kind of typical task. Give a talk to your year group, encouraging them to volunteer in their community. So what we've got to do is work out various things that will help us give the examiner exactly what they're expecting. So you can see over on the right hand side there, we've got that the purpose is to persuade. We've got the word encourage, so we'd also think of that as persuasion. We know our audience, it's you, it's a group of 16-year-olds just like you. Therefore, because we're persuading and we're talking to people our own age, we're going to be writing using informal language. Okay, so that's the purpose, the audience, and the language used. Now, there is absolutely nothing special about the layout of a speech. It's just a series of connected paragraphs. You could give each paragraph a topic heading, but nothing else is really necessary. And the structure is simple too, which we'll look at on the next couple of slides, but simple really. You say hello, you introduce yourself and make your purpose absolutely clear. Then I'd like you to use 4 paragraphs. You're going to be persuasive, you're going to go through 4 topics, then you're going to thank your audience, and you're going to say goodbye. So you need some content. What are you going to speak about? How are you going to keep going? So ideally you're going to need about 4 topics, 4 things that are linked to the task you've been given. So you can see my task about encouraging people like you to volunteer in your community. I just picked 4 tasks that I thought would work. Tasks to gain work experience. Everyone's going to benefit from what you're doing. You could develop personal skills, and you never know, you might make new friends or surprise yourself. And those will be the topics that I go on to write. And so you're going to need 4 for whatever task comes up. So we need to build our paragraphs. If we're going to have 4 topics, we then need to take each of those topics and go into more detail. In this case, we need to be quite persuasive. You see there's quite a lot of writing on this slide, but it's about some of the tools that you could use to develop. So we start with a topic, we say something believable and factual. But then we think about our audience not caring, saying to themselves, so what? And all we do is add another comment to convince them even further. The best thing to write about in a task like this is to add a little story, an anecdote, as an example to help make your point. You could also use an expert, somebody who can back you up. It's kind of you saying, don't take my word for it. And here, rarely, of course, you might need to use quotation marks to show that you're quoting an expert. You could also add a sentence using a rhetorical question. And you might make a suggestion. What could your audience do? What could they do next? What do you want them to do? So there's quite a lot there, but the most important thing to remember is you don't have to use them all. You don't have to use them all in the order that I've written them down, but they're there for you to use, and it will keep you going. It will keep you working towards longer paragraphs if you know about these things. So here I've got an example paragraph. It uses most or some of the techniques I was just talking about, some of the tools I was just talking about, and it goes like this. One reason to volunteer is perhaps a selfish one. You will also benefit. Working for free in your local community is an excellent way to get some work experience, which is something employers are always looking for. As a result of giving a few hours of your time every week, you give yourself the advantage over many other young people looking for paid work who don't already have the experience you do. I have a paid job. I work in a coffee bar in town, but I also volunteer at the Laurels care home. I got the job in the coffee shop because I had a reference from my boss at the Laurels. Who wouldn't want to help others while helping themselves? So maybe you should think about the type of part-time job you want and try to find some volunteer work that would help you. So there's a good example of a really quite lengthy paragraph that just uses lots of the stages and lots of the tools that were on the previous slide. And that helps us to keep going, and it makes sure that we write persuasively as well. Now earlier, when I was asking you to imagine being behind that lectern, I said writing a speech that's designed to be spoken out loud is a bit like an article. However, there are one or two tricks that you can put in that are going to make things better. So as you can see, I've added a few lines to the paragraph that I just read out on the last slide. And what we've got here are some things that are really useful to remind your reader that you've got an audience for your speech and that you've got a place, an environment, and that everybody's in that place when you're talking to them. So I'm only really going to concentrate on the bits in red, but I hope you can see that what they do is they help to prove that what you're writing is a speech. So we have things like, honestly, the best thing you can do is spend every weekend working for free. I can see from some of your faces that you don't believe me, but it's true. Let me explain. So that really is a good way of saying I'm talking to a group of people. I'm talking to you. And a bit further on, I know some of you won't believe, but okay, so in other words, we're imagining our audience in the front of us, and we're still talking about them and what they think. And then finally at the bottom there, I've made a comment about where we are and the room that we're all sitting in. There are loads of places within a mile of where we are all sitting. So it's just a simple way of reminding your examiner that you've remembered that this is a speech, that this is you talking to a group of people. And they're good little tricks to just make sure that you prove that you're writing a speech. So to recap, remember a speech doesn't need speech marks because basically all of it's spoken out loud. You need to work out why you're giving the speech, what's the purpose of your speech, and who you're speaking to, because that will make it plain whether you're going to speak formally or whether you're going to speak informally. You then need to plan to write 4 detailed paragraphs. You need 4 good topics. Make sure they're not too similar, otherwise you might run out. You might, and this is something I haven't mentioned yet, you could begin with a strange or a startling fact. So one clever way to do this is almost to start with the opposite idea of what you want to talk about. So you might say something like, talking about the task we've been doing in this PowerPoint, volunteering is a complete waste of time, right? Wrong. And I'm here to explain why. So that's a really clever way of getting your audience interested. Okay. The simpler way though, if you can't do that, you just say hello, introduce yourself, and then you explain your reason for speaking to the group of people. You've got to remember that each of your paragraph needs to be built, and you need to use a range of the tools that you could use to just keep it going. The best one to keep things going is the anecdote, the little story that proves your point. One clever technique is to try to link your next paragraph to the last one. If you can see my little bit of red in brackets, volunteering will give you great work experience, but it might also lead to new friends. So I've got 2 topics there. I've been talking about work experience, but now I'm moving on to new friends, and that's the way you link 2 paragraphs together. Remember to make plenty of references to your audience. Talk about you, the group of people in front of you, and the fact that they are in front of you. Okay. Finish by challenging your audience to do something. Tell them to do something. Get them to engage with you in some way. And then do not forget, this is something that often gets left off, Thank your audience for listening to you, and remember to say goodbye and think about how you would say goodbye depending on the group of people who are in front of you. Well, I hope that's been useful, and try it out.